Before we get to today's stories, I would like to say a disclaimer. The stories presented in this video delve into themes that might be unsettling for some viewers, including graphic descriptions and eerie scenarios. Viewer discretion is strongly advised. These tales aren't for the faint of heart. If my chilling content sends shivers down your spine and leaves you craving more, please subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me. Just had a glitch I cannot explain. I work from home and often sit on my couch to do menial office tasks in the afternoons. I sit with a side table on my left and an organizer bin to my right. Since I do this so often, I have chargers laying just right, supplies on the side table, etc. I went to lift my phone a few minutes ago and stupidly grabbed it by the charger. It got snagged on the couch and ended up falling between the couch cushion and the armrest. Because of the way I heard it fall and how loud it was, I actually thought that the phone fell all the way through the couch and onto the floor. I got on my hands and knees and looked under the couch. When I didn't see it, I realized that it had not fallen all the way through and was actually stuck inside the couch itself. After moving the organizer bin, pillow, and couch cushion, I could see a small hole where the phone must have perfectly fallen, allowing it to go into the couch. I attempted to stick my arm into the hole, but then had no choice but to rip the lining of the couch in order to get my hand close enough to the phone to grab it. I got my phone and cringed at the amount of crumbs that were attached to it. I wiped it off, plugged it back into its charger and placed it on my side table, while mentally noting how close I had just come to damaging it, since it was delivered to me only 24 hours ago and is brand new. I then put my workspace and cushion back. I added a pillow to the side of the couch nearest the side table so that nothing could fall back into the hole. I was thinking about how I was going to go about fixing the hole I had ripped in the lining when I reached for my phone on the side table. It wasn't there. I stood up and looked around, comically patting my non-existent pockets. I looked under the couch, in my organizer bin, everywhere. Then I dinged my phone with my watch and I could hear it. It was inside the couch. I removed the pillow and cushion and went to reach my hand in the hole in the lining, but I couldn't. The hole wasn't big enough. I had to rip it again. Here's how I know it was a glitch and cannot be explained away. 1. I am home alone. No one could have moved it, but even if I wasn't alone, I hadn't left the room. This all happened within a few moments. 2. I heard it fall through the couch the first time. It was loud and undeniable. I would have heard it fall if it happened again. There are no sounds in this room except for my dog softly snoring. 3. I plugged it back into its charger after I got it out of the couch the first time. Even if it had somehow fallen, the charger would have been moved. But it wasn't. It was laying just as I had laid it, only it wasn't attached to the phone like it should have been. 4. I had to rip the lining again. It was as though the universe reset by like 2 minutes, and my phone went back into the couch and the lining unripped. I can't explain this away. It finally happened to me. I've experienced a glitch. What just happened? This experience really made me think I was going crazy. I work for a popular coffee and donut shop chain, and on this particular day, I was really busy serving a lineup of customers at storefront. We were short-staffed, so I was handling the line all by myself when I ran out of cream in my cream machine. I didn't have time to go to the back to grab a new bag of cream, so when the baker came out front to stage some new donuts, I asked if she would run to the fridge and bring me out a new bag of cream while I continued to serve customers. She brought me the bag of cream, set up the hopper, and put it in the machine for me. All I had to do was cut the hose. So at the front of house, we only used the lime green colored scissors, and at back of house kitchen, we only use black handled scissors for food prep. There is usually 1 or 2 pairs of the lime green scissors at my station at storefront. Our countertops are black, so lime green scissors really stand out on them. You can't miss them. Additionally, we keep a very clean and organized counter area, so there really is nothing else on the countertops except for the machines, cups, lids, stirring spoons, and the scissors. I reach my hand under the brewing stand to grab the scissors, and they aren't there. I check all around the storefront area, anywhere I thought scissors may be, and nothing. So I asked the baker if she wouldn't mind grabbing me a pair of scissors to cut the bag of cream. When she came back, she handed me a pair of black-handled scissors. I know this for certain because I immediately thought to myself, these are the wrong scissors for up here. We never use the black ones out front. They're meant for food prep. But because she's a baker and does all the food prep, she automatically grabbed black ones. I didn't mention this to her at all. Being in a hurry and needing that cream open, I thought, screw it. I'm using the black ones and I'll put them in the dishwasher as soon as I have a moment. I get through the line of customers, maybe 4 to 5 minutes have passed, and I start to wipe down and sanitize my counter area. No other staff members have come up front to my area of the store. Everyone else was working drive-through. As I'm wiping everything down, I discover not one, but 2 pairs of lime green handled scissors right there underneath the brewer stands. The very first place I had looked for them, and the black scissors were nowhere to be found. I was so confused. I thought that maybe I had misremembered, so I immediately went to ask the baker what color the scissors were that she brought me. She told me she had brought me the black-handled scissors. I then asked if she had taken them back and switched them out with the green ones. She said no, she was just as confused as me. I then went around asking everyone if they had brought 2 pairs of green scissors up front, and they all said they hadn't. So to summarize, 1 pair of black scissors turned into 2 pairs of bright green scissors, and I still don't know what happened to the black pair. I felt like I was losing my mind. Anyone else have something happen like that? I think I teleported. I was telling a friend about this experience, and they directed me here to share it. In November 2019, before anyone knew about COVID-19 in the UK, both me and my fiancé had it. We didn't know what it was until months later, though. COVID hit my fiancé worse than me, and all she wanted to eat was pastry. I was actually able to get out of bed, so while I still felt like death, I felt like a walk to the store was still doable for me, especially as I could get the bus home. The walk from the house to the store would take 35 minutes on a good day. I'm chronically ill with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue syndrome. I promise these small details are important. The walk to the store took me a little longer, as I had to keep stopping to hack up a lung and catch my breath. I acquired the pastries and some sore throat medication before making my way to the bus station beside the store and finding the buses weren't running properly because so many drivers were off sick due to whatever this virus was that was going around. We didn't know anything about COVID-19 until around February 2020. So I text my fiancé right as I start walking from the bus station that I'm on my way, but walking, so I'll be back when I'm back. She replied almost immediately with an okay, and to take my time. I put in my headphones and started my music, which I remember distinctly was a 10-minute song, and began walking. I remember reaching the edge of the store building and turning a corner, and then I remember walking up the garden path and opening the front door to the house. My fiancée had come downstairs to get a drink and was extremely confused as she saw me. She told me to check the time on the message I had sent. The message I had sent her to say I was on my way home had been sent 6 minutes previous. There is physically no way I could have made it home. An easy 3 kilometers walk. We play Pokemon Go, so we knew roughly the distance. In 6 minutes. Even if I ran, there is no way it could have happened. I was also still only halfway through the song that was playing when I set off. I wasn't particularly out of breath. I didn't have a coughing fit upon arrival home, and that walk back always brought me out in a sweat, but I wasn't sweating. The only explanation I can come up with is that I teleported somehow. Anyone have any thoughts? There he is. Again. Every time I drive through Ravenna, Ohio, in which is very often, there he is again. This guy who is not homeless, but probably lives in some type of government housing near downtown Ravenna, crosses my path every time I drive through. Not just see him walking down the road, like literally crosses the road right in front of my car, even if we're not at a crosswalk or stoplight or somewhere where you're supposed to cross. It doesn't just happen on the main road either. It happens on side roads. You could maybe think that he had memorized my car, but he also does it when I drive the truck too. The truck has tinted windows, and there's no sticker or anything to make it stand out from the crowd. Even when I do drive through Ravenna in my car and see him with enough notice to make it maybe high-tacked and him acknowledge that I'm looking at him, he doesn't show any facial indications that lets me know that he recognizes me. I used to work at a Circle K and him be a customer on just a few occasions. I'd make conversation with him just like I would anybody else, but it was kind of difficult because, honestly, he is not all there. Or is he? He's known for his rants that sound crazy. Sometimes he speaks of religion. He approaches people at pumps while they're pumping their fuel, rambling off crazy talk, and sometimes complete nonsense. Customers come in and they mention it, and usually everybody laughs because we all know him. And it's like, whatever. I actually enjoyed hearing some of the things he was saying because I kind of thought a few things he said were interesting. I liked the guy so much that I gave him a nickname, Doubloon. Because one time he came into Circle K and told me he had a doubloon and it was worth a lot of money. And I totally entertained it. Another time he came in telling us he was going to sue Longhorn Tobacco Company because he came up with the word Longhorn and that they stole it. But back to the point. Sometimes I feel like he came out of nowhere. Like I am pretty observant of my surroundings and you think I would see him walking, but I don't. All of a sudden he'll just walk out in front of my vehicle. I mean, he did it the other day when I came out of the bank, in which is just a simple come out of the drive-through, turning left, and then there's a light right there where I'm now stopped, and then all of a sudden, before that light can change, there he is, stepping out in front of my car/truck. I've even feared a few times that one day I might hit him. On another note, he's not the only person in the town of Ravenna that I'm suspicious is also like an NPC in my simulation. The guy who runs the laundromat, I see only a giant eagle and always in the same area, right in front of the registers. 80% of the time I go grocery shopping there, I run into him. I see the repeating pattern and it's really hard to ignore. I've never been to any other laundromat in the area and I don't usually go to laundromats. I question whether or not, if I never went there, if I would be running into him at Giant Eagle. I know that my life has been paranormal episode after episode after episode, and I should be used to weird things happening, but this kind of paranormal thing is actually bothering me. Ever since I got past life regression therapy done on me around 12 years old, my life has never been the same. So my question for all of you, if by chance this was a simulation that I was living in and there was a pattern of people crossing my path and showing up specific places, is this because I'm on my spiritual path? Or does this mean that I'm stuck in repeat and I need to do something to change my path? And then if I do change my routine, or let's say do some things that I have been maybe putting off or not putting enough effort into in regards to, let's say, my business, will I then know that I'm then on my right path because I won't be seeing them anymore? Would they stop crossing my path? I'm starting to feel like Jim Carrey in the movie The Truman Show. I'm not schizophrenic, but I am a little bipolar. And if I don't understand something, it kind of pisses me off. Lol. So even if you don't have an answer for me, feel free to let me know if you have anything like this happening to you in the comments below. Strange fog. I want to start out by saying that this is one of the weirder things that have happened to me, and some of the details might make me sound not credible, but I assure you that this was all very real to me, and I'll never forget it. I'm going to start towards the end so that you can better understand the dream part of the story, but the actual fog part of the story isn't until the end. I was in my later 20s, so let's ballpark it and say about 10 to 15 years ago. My mom had been calling me a little bit more than usual, nagging me, telling me I needed to get this, and this done, and it was becoming frustrating because I didn't have a car and I was on somebody else's time. So I was left with pretty much my hands in the air, like, what do you want me to do? I'm stuck. Still, she continued on until I eventually, one day on the phone with her, I finally got sick of hearing it and began to tell her what her problem was. I said, "Since when do you care so much about me? All you did when I was younger was try to pawn me off." She asked me what I meant by that, and I explained to her that since the day I was labeled bipolar, all she did was try to find places she could stick me to pass time until my sister was out of the house, because between her and I, she definitely had her hands full because we were not really listening. Not one bit. And she just couldn't handle us both, I guess. So instead of disciplining my older sister and seeing that I was about to go down the same path, following in her footsteps, she was probably just trying to avert that situation. I told her that I thought it was really messed up that she put me in 3 mental hospitals, along with a livable jail, all because I wasn't taking the prescriptions prescribed to me on a regulated, consistent basis. So she figured by sticking me in these places, it would help regulate me on my pills. I didn't take them consistently because I wasn't home consistently. I was out having fun. But when I mentioned that she put me in 3, she stopped me and said, "No, wait, you weren't in 3 mental hospitals?" And I said, "What do you mean?" "Yes, I was." And then she told me to name them. The first 2 she agreed with as I named them off. But when I got to the 3rd one and said, "Edwin Shaw," she said, "What are you talking about? You've never been to Edwin Shaw." In a confused, stern tone, I said, "Yes, I have." And she asked, "When? Can you describe it?" But when I tried to remember what the place looked like and the details of my stay, I was stopped in my tracks. I could not remember one thing about the place, but for some reason thought that I had been lived there. Rewinding back to a year prior to this, I had a dream that my husband and I were in a great hurry to get my toddler, at the time, and bags packed, out of the home and into the car as quickly as possible. We were fearful and needed to get out immediately. But as soon as we exited the home and got down the porch steps, a big blue boat car. Sorry, I don't know what kind of car it was, but that's like a term we use around here to describe these kind of vehicles. Pulled up and 2 big guys got out. They began to approach us, but then stop and stood waiting as I sighed, realizing that I had to go with them. I hugged and kissed my family, and then they guided me to the vehicle, placing me in the back seat. That's when we began our long car ride, probably at least an hour or so to our destination, in which was a mystery to me. I remember driving down a stretch of road with just trees lining each side for miles and miles. Reminds me now of a scene in the show The Sopranos. When we finally did arrive, we pulled into a long drive with a gate that was open, and after approaching the big brick building, I was let out of the car and directed to the front yard area, in which could have been classified as maybe a courtyard. I noticed that there were a lot of people wandering around in hospital gowns, and then one by one, they all started approaching me. They circled me, and then started to touch me. Maybe they were welcoming me, but after being surrounded and them all touching me, they were starting to scratch me, probably unintentionally, and it began to hurt. I don't think that they knew that they were hurting me, but still I was in a panic. That's when I looked over at the front steps of the building where a assuming head nurse was standing, and I looked at her with the look of, "I need help." I saw her facial expression turn to negative. She looked pretty irritated. But I saw her take action by ringing a bell, causing everyone to immediately head towards the door. I was relieved but also pretty upset and confused. When I entered the building, right around the corner, there was a decent-sized office lounge area where I was led to stand and wait. But just like before, one by one, maybe not as many, mentally handicapped people surrounded me, and once again were trying to touch me, but of course, instead, scratching me again. At this point, I am getting pretty pissed, but I think that anybody would have been lost all patience at that point. I look over towards the bottom of some steps that lead upstairs, and once again, there's that same head nurse, but only she's talking to somebody this time. So to get her attention, I shouted, "Hey, can you do something? I'm not like these people." That's when she put her nose up in the air and led me up the steps, kind of all huffy-puffy. When we got to the top, there was a few hallways that stemmed off, but she led me diagonally right into the first room. There were 4 cots on the left and 5 on the right. She directed me to the very last one, all the way around it, closest to the corner and the wall. I sat on the bed and I looked down to see that a few of the bags that we had previously packed were waiting there for me. I thought, oh good, and I picked them up to see what kind of contents might be in them. But as I started opening the first bag, the head nurse who stood in front of me now said, "The doctor will be in a minute to burn you with a light bulb." I looked up at her with squinted eyes and confusion, and again she pointed her nose up in the air once with a quick sassy, I then listened and noted the sound of her high heels clicking as I watched her walk out of the room. Her attitude seemed like she felt some sense of satisfactory knowing what was about to happen to me. That's when I began to panic. I look up, and in a thin window with no glass or screen sat my cat Buddy. Remember, this is a dream, so don't think, well, this is becoming far-fetched and give up on me just yet, okay? Buddy looked at me and then looked out the window and then looked back at me, insinuating that we got to go. And this is the way out. So I start ripping open the Tide plastic grocery bag with the clothing inside of it, and I find my daughter's sleepers instead of my own clothes/possessions. So I started taking 2 of the sleepers and attempting to tie them together to hopefully fashion some sort of rope. But all of a sudden the doctor walks in. Since when is the doctor really in a minute? He stands in front of me where the nurse had stood prior, and I slowly lowered the bag to set it back down on the floor. That's when I noticed what was in his hands. I would describe it as a light bulb on a stick. Not a regular light bulb, but an old-style tube one of sorts, and the stick was a thick long tube/electronical device. I put my hands up, stood up, and said, "No, wait, you don't have to do this." And I positioned myself so that when I was backing up that I would back all the way up to position myself up against the wall next to the window where the cat sat on the sill. I looked at the cat, and he looked at me, and then he weighed things out like he was really about to jump, but then he stopped. That's when he looked back at me with a look like, "We're not gonna make it." And I looked back at the doctor, who was stepping towards me, and he took that device in, which I would compare to as a cattle prod, and he hit me in the chest with it. He was electrocuting me with this device. Then he would pull it back, and then he hit me in my other side around my stomach area, pressing hard. Then he pulled it off of me again and hit me in the other side of my chest. That's when I visually saw myself leaving my body through the top of my head. And then I followed the cat out the window. When the cat jumped from the windowsill out towards the ground, I watched him jump at an angle into the field. But when I went out the window, I floated straight down. The cat had some distance on me, but I did my best to follow him into an open area, slack clearing along the tree line behind the building. By the time I got to the path, he had already cut off into a little area, but luckily I saw him in time and was able to catch up pretty quick. I watched as he jumped into a hole of what looked to be a large metal structure that was kind of leaning almost on its side. It looked sun-beaten, meaning light-faded blue and yellow in color. I thought, I'm never going to fit through that hole. But then I looked back at the big reddish brick building and thought, freak that. And that's when I started tearing off these metal kind of sheets around the hole to make it bigger. I climbed through the hole and came out in my daughter's playhouse in our front yard, but only instead of the cat being there, it was my child with me. Now, anybody could pass this off as just a really scary lucid dream with maybe metaphors or some meaning behind it, but it felt so real. Even my chest and spots that he hit with that strange device physically hurt when I had awoken that morning. Fast forwarding back to my mom on the phone and the confusion with Edwin Shaw. She suggested that I look it up because she insisted that it's been closed for years. I, of course, didn't believe her and jumped on the computer immediately to investigate. From what I gathered, it was no longer being used to help adolescents with mental health struggles during the window when my mom was sending me to these types of places. It seems that they were more concentrated on rehabilitation when it came to brain injuries and multiple other things. But how could this be? I mean, I had been confiding in my friends for all these years, telling them that I've been wrongfully placed in specifically 3 mental hospitals while trying to cope with the trauma. Why would I think I've been in a hospital that I have never been to? The reality of the situation is that I realized that I hadn't even ever heard of the place before. To be more descriptive, I had never researched, been told stories, seen pictures, learned about it in school or anything. I believe, during the time window, they could have still been associated with outpatient, but inpatient was no longer a thing. I know this because they eventually affiliated themselves with Akron Children's Hospital, and that was one of the places that I was placed in relation to the other 2. So there I sat with false memories and pretty much just shell-shocked. I hung up with my mom pretty quickly and continued to read everything that I could find on the subject, leading me to a website that had pictures of the back tree line. Although I just looked and tried to find the picture to post along with this, I could not. I do remember it being associated with some type of paranormal exploration/ghost hunting group and posted in the comments of someone highlighting the place on their website. I read about their not only walk-around investigation inside of the building, but also they spoke about exploring the outside around the building as well. Eventually, I came across a picture where they spoke about a weird fog or mist that they saw only in one spot of the woodline, and how they couldn't explain it, but it was definitely noticeable and out of place. They expressed that they didn't understand why there would be a fog just in that one area, and they were confused. That's when I noticed the old overturned truck right next to it. That looked as if it was abandoned long ago, leaving it looking rusty and surprisingly sun-beaten. I saw this truck, it felt like 1,000 emotions flood my entire body, and I began to cry. But I guess crying is an understatement. I would more describe it as bawled my eyes out. It felt like I was grieving. I am 100% positive that that metal structure that I tore through was that truck from my dream. There's no doubt in my mind. I would put money on it. Now, after saying all that, I want to assure everybody that I am not a crazy person. Although I do tell people when I meet them that they can call me Crazy Amy because I'm a paranormal investigator. Lol. I was later in life reassessed and the label of bipolar was retracted. Although I don't think that is 100% accurate, and I believe that they just didn't want to pay me, issue me SSI checks anymore after I turned 18. I have since raised my daughter, who is now a teenager. I have a surprise now 2-year-old as well, along with a job and a small business with a storefront. I have 1,000 friends, and for a while there I also had a paranormal club with 550 people in it, who I would take out on free adventures. I'm extremely overly nice and caring, even to the point where I've read over 2,000 people's tarot cards for free. So I'm not some nut job. More so lately just another ordinary face in the crowd, married, living a completely normal life. My only need is blood pressure medication. Since then, my mom has passed away, and I do feel bad for all the times I did lose my temper enough to tell her what her problem was, and for blaming her for not being able to juggle 3 kids. Having to juggle 2 now myself, I can relate and understand how difficult that must have been for her. But I thought it would be cool to share one of my more frightening personal experiences. And before I jump off here, I wanted to tell you what my final hypothesis is of why I was even out there. When I think back to the dream setting of Edwin Shaw, it looked like what it would have looked like back in the day before my time. It looked as if it was around the era where they had started housing tuberculosis patients. It has come to my understanding that hospitals took in tuberculosis patients because they were offered extra funding. Some places promoted themselves to house people with tuberculosis, acting as if they could help them with some experimental devices, miracle cure. I'm sure that everybody's heard about all the horror stories of all these experimental devices that were created that were not helpful, but ended up more likely torture devices. I could picture the scenario of them using a device on a person and then that person expiring because of it. and the doctors notifying the families afterwards, telling them that they've been through enough and that their facility for a small fee would take care of all of the funeral stuff. You just take the time that you need now to grieve. Don't worry, we'll handle the rest. Like now, you can all just move on with your lives. Before Edwin Shaw was torn down, people had reported and even documented, using video and photos, the tunnel in the basement where they would take the expired people out through instead of the front door and directly to the cemetery located on the property. So I guess the big question would be, could I be buried in that cemetery right now? Some people might suggest that I go there, and believe me, after 10 years, I have repetitively asked myself why I have not. I guess I kind of fear that if I go there and I do find me, that it could alter something in my present reality. Will I still be kind of psychic? Will it change my whole timeline? Will I get home and only have one kid instead of two? Could it throw off everything and even change even more of my memories? Or could it possibly set off a chain of events that could cause the current me to expire? There's just too many questions for me to jump up and want to risk it. I don't feel like dodging things for the rest of my life, like in reference to something like the movie Final Destination. But here I sit at almost 40, still thinking about it, and it still really bothers me. That's it for today, guys. Did you ever had a glitch? Share in the comments. Thank you for watching. Bye.